Hi, thank you all for joining us today on this panel. The discussion is how we can figure out this sort of new way of AI, how it's impacting how business decision making is made within organizations. I think sort of as a short introduction, what I can say is that it seems that this is sort of the third wave of a new technology. First time that we had to face something this disruptive was back in the dot-com era, and probably about 15 years later during the blockchain sort of the introduction of blockchain as a technology, but it seems that AI is doing everything, rewriting everything at a much faster sort of pace. I'd like if you can sort of give it like a short introduction about sort of yourselves and maybe sort of your thesis on how you see sort of AI impacting sort of everyday business right now.
Good afternoon from myself. I'm Nikos Antoniou. I'm a partner at Biron Ventures. Fund, seed-stage fund, investing in B2B SaaS software companies based out of Athens. We started last year. We've made 5 investments so far, and we're looking forward to a portfolio of 70 to 20 investments. Regarding AI, everything's AI these days. I mean, the impact is huge, the impact and the implications. They are huge, and what we're going to see in the next couple of years, I think we wouldn't have seen them for many years, many thousands of years, to be honest with you. AI will, I mean, has been part of everything, or is getting to everything, and it will change our life and world. That's what I believe.
Hello, Alex Eleftheriadis. I'm a founding partner at Big Pie Ventures. We are now a multi-stage fund. We started in 2018, based in Athens, and we now have both early-stage funds that invest in pre-seed, Series A companies, and now we have a new growth fund which invests in companies that are already established. They have 5 to 10 million euros of revenue, and they need capital to grow. Before Big Pie, I was a professor of electrical engineering at Columbia University. I had my own company in the video hosting space. So I'm old enough to have seen several, technology transformations. So I was a PhD student when the first browser was invented, and so I've seen, many iterations. I guess the latest one was SaaS. You correctly pointed it out. And so, at Big Pie, we look at what's happening, obviously, with awe, and it's clearly a transformative stage for many things. And so we are also trying to figure out what is our role in this changing environment, right? Because we are called to decide whether or not we invest in a particular solution. And so we see all the transformation happening with these mega companies, with the tens of billions of dollars of investment. Okay, which of course, this is not something where we can compete, let's say, regionally or as investors, right? This is for much bigger sort of wallets. But what is hard for us to see, and we're still sort of trying to figure out, is where these companies will draw the line between things they will do on their own and things that will be left to be done by specialists. And by specialists, I mean those who bring domain expertise, right? Very good understanding of the needs of a specific client or client type, right? Where they can bring those tools to bear to deliver a solution, okay? So where exactly that starts depends a lot on the appetite of the big companies. You just saw OpenAI announcing, let's say, a software development tool with Codex, right? So if you are a company using AI to produce code, now you are, you're on defense. Now you have to answer to the availability, right, of this tool by OpenAI, which means, people will be very reluctant to buy yours. So we are looking at that. Ultimately, my conclusion, and I'll shut up after that, is that you should always start from the customer. In other words, a company ultimately delivers a product that has to provide value to a customer. So regardless of how this is built, right, that's how it all starts. I have a need, you are giving a product to fulfill that need. So as long as that's taken care of, then you have a viable business. Okay? So with AI, of course you will accelerate the development. Of course you will also introduce capabilities that would be very difficult to implement with, let's say, raw C++ code. Okay? But ultimately the question to me is always, is this a great product addressing a large market from a team that can do it and understands what they're building. Okay?
I'm going to borrow my quick name, introduce So I'm Ricardo Bajano, I'm a founding partner in Metavan Venture Capital. We also started in 2018, like Alex here in Big Five. We are investing out of the second fund at the moment, and we're also launching a smaller fund to do pre-seed investments later this month. So we're going the other way in Big Five, looking at the beginning of the chain. We've made 37 investments so far. We're planning on doing another 10 or 12 with Fund 2 at the seed stage, and then also the pre-seed, another 10 or 12 with a smaller fund that we're launching. Overall, I think the AI discussion is very relevant, obviously, at the moment. We hardly see any company that doesn't have a claim to AI. And I think what fundamentally changes is that we just have a different layer of infrastructure at the moment. So until now, you were building based on some principles of the company. Again, it starts, I very much agree with Alex, that it starts with the need of the client. And what kind of specific know-how, technical or industry-wise, you're bringing in to build a solution. The bigger companies, again, OpenAI, Mistral in Europe, etc., have leveraged different resources, financial and others, to start building this infrastructure. And the discussion, I think, for funds like us that operate within Greece and within Europe is to try and see which verticals and which teams can address specific problems given this infrastructure and given the space, the speed in which it's developing, right? Because I think one of the major changes, and it is a change for VCs to accept as well, that the speed of change has just accelerated. So I think that's relevant today, it's not relevant in 3 months and 6 months, etc. I think internally we're struggling trying to figure out exactly how we position ourselves, because you don't have the experience of working with this infrastructure. But ultimately, it will be up to the people that are addressing a specific market that they somehow have knowledge on. So this is how we're seeing our investments at the moment and the things that we're still trying to find and fund and support and to operate in this area.
Nice. Thank you all. Maybe, Mirto, I'll start with you sort of to continue this conversation. I think it would be really useful for the audience to see if we can understand on a timeline where we are in this sort of era of mergers and acquisitions right now in AI. Are we at a very early stage where companies are going in it for FOMO? Are they doing it simply because they are trying to sort of defensibility, because it seems that incumbents right now are in sort of this in-between situation where they can either try to defend their business model or they can try sort of to innovate by sort of trying to incorporate AI. Where do you think we are in this sort of cycle right now?
So maybe we can make a distinction between what's happening within the technology sector and what's happening between like the industry, if you will, and technology companies. So I'll start within the technology sector. So always when you have a disruption, a lot of the companies are bought early on. It happens in cyber, it happens before in blockchain, it happens in VR, even before you never kicked off. So you have a bunch of technology companies acquiring smaller ones, relatively small valuations, just for FOMO, as you said, but also to make sure that it doesn't go any further, or someone else doesn't get the technology, or even hardware, headsets, whatever it is that they are using become proprietary. So that's something that is also happening now with AI companies. At the same time, within the technology sector specifically, there's a lot of funding going towards different companies. Again, I would distinguish between what the funding that goes to build the infrastructure layer, which is very specific to a few companies and very large, of course, and then everything else. So this will drive early M&A, if you will. I think it will be happening for the next few quarters, maybe the next year and a half, in my opinion. Now, industry, I mean, when I say industry, I mean any commercial or industrial company buying AI companies. I don't see that happening very much at the moment, just because they haven't analyzed it. You have some of the, I'm thinking about shipping and I'm thinking about manufacturing that have done small acquisitions in terms of AI first companies, but these are more exploratory, I would think. I think the companies are in a very early stage of their understanding of how their business will change through AI, so I don't think that this will happen in substance for the next few years.
Very interesting. Alex, can I ask you, because it's quite clearly right now that we're dealing in sort of a period where there is asymmetric information, and as a VC you have to constantly sort of deal with that. How can you evaluate something which is very early on? How can we advise CEOs of established companies that they have to sort of go through all of this noise and figure out what are those metrics or what are those things that they should be looking at when they're evaluating whether that's incorporating AI into their pipeline or sort of acquiring a company?
No, it's a very good question. In fact, we get it a lot also from companies, from businessmen who have invested in it by LPs or by us come to us. And I think it's very early, and I think I like the separation between sort of intra-technology, like companies operating within the core AI-LLM space and the application space. In the core AI-LLM space, there is now a world domination sort of fight. So the goal there is to become like the Google. I mean, Google was a winner in search. And you go online, I will know everything about what you're searching for, who you are, right? But it took a while to get there. There were other competitors, and they grew fast to be the one. Right now, they dominate like 80%, whatever, of the market advertising. Then you have Meta, Facebook, right? Then the game was, okay, I know everything. Google knows everything about a single person. Meta came and said, I want to know everything about people's interactions. Different model, right? Again, there was a fight, who will be the winner. It wasn't obvious that Facebook would be the winner, right? And Facebook went, Instagram, they bought, left and right, etc. So that process is going on right now with AI, right? To see who will be the big winners. Might be more than one. In fact, maybe it will be regional, like one in the US, one in Europe, etc. Right? So that's going on very much right now. So if we're talking about M&A, that's where the activity is. In terms of the application space, we see startups that are trying to build solutions. They are still very early in their development cycle, so they're still struggling to find their footing. Forget about acquisitions, etc. And on the mature companies, to go back to your question, it's a difficult question. They are trying to figure it out because they have established processes, and it's not clear if you look at the org chart what you should do. So, in fact, there are enough consultants who will come in and look at your org chart and start identifying positions and how you could translate that to become an automated function. Like there's a view of a future enterprise where the org chart has people, and in some slots it's agents, right? So, Bob or Mary, who used to do whatever, market analysis, okay, go on, then they'll be supervised by somebody who will just be supervising an agent, right? But we're far from having clarity on that, okay? So, excellent question, but the answer will come, will unfold over the next few years.
Very true. Nico, I'd like to follow up because one other thing that's going to be very interesting to see how it evolves is what is the business model sort of AI. When we were moving sort of to the .com era with the Netflixes and these types of services, we moved to this sort of monthly payment service. There's very few businesses right now that still go on a consumption model. AWS maybe is sort of one example. And it seems that what is going on right now with AI is unsustainable. We're paying a very low price right now for something that probably costs 10x. How do you see these business models sort of evolving in the future?
Good question. I'll answer here because we're still at the beginning. So everybody's trying to figure out first what their position is in the market first, and then try to figure out pricing and how they can bear the cost of the acquisition and the transformation within the companies. Right now, no one, if you ask me, we're at the phase where they're trying to bring the technology inside into their organization and transform them. Pricing will come later on. I mean, there are a few models, but they're not sustainable, as you said. So it will take some time until they figure out how to make money, basically.
If I may add that, so the first thing to recognize, I think, is that we are in a highly, completely inefficient model at the moment. So the energy cost alone does not justify me asking, please put dollars in my thing. It does not. And this is also why I think businesses should not have a existential problem at the moment, because it's not that the AI is going to be doing all of them. It makes absolutely no financial sense. So this at the time is sponsored. A lot of industries are disrupting or like that. Even if you think of B2C stuff, I don't know, Walt or however you were getting your coffee, a lot of things were financed heavily by external capital, big investment, big governments, whatever it is. And at the end of the day, some of them survive, and they will find, I think, value when the true value of the cost that they're saving is revealed. I think Alex touched on it as well. The assumption is that everyone will be gone, and there will be no jobs, and they'll just kind of like supervising agents talking to each other or whatever it is. I don't think that's what's going to happen in practice. But this will ultimately, in my opinion, determine the price is there. And maybe the pricing will be so high to make it justifiable that it will not make sense. So it will still be more cost efficient, time-wise and financially, to have actual people doing this. By the way, it starts with energy, in my opinion. So you need to discuss nuclear if you want to be discussing this issue. Otherwise, there's no way you can do it.
I would like to add to this. Look, if you look for right now for growth, market growth purposes, it's a flat fee. You have an OpenAI Pro, it's $20. If you look at Google services, for example, right, if you're a customer, again, it's a flat fee. But if you go to commercial plans, let's say in Amazon, you bet you're charged by network, by storage, by everything, right? They meter everything and you pay. And it's fine as a company to be metered. As an individual, right? I don't want Netflix to charge me, by the minutes watched, right? It's easier if you just keep it simple. But as a business, it's fine. So I think it will definitely go back to a model where they will absolutely measure energy and everything. And I think what we'll see, we won't be happy. It will be extremely, extremely expensive. And I think, two remarks. One is that because of people's jobs being lost, I think a good statement is that people will be replaced not by AI, but people who supervise AI. So you might lose your job not because of AI, but because of somebody who will be using AI. So that's point number one. And point number two, there was an excellent paper written by Yale, the Department of Economics, I forget the author, but it makes the following argument that if you assume AI being dominant and HI and everything, ultimately your salary, right, will be the cost of replacing you. That's your highest salary you can expect to receive. Why? Because obviously if the salary is higher than that, you can't be replaced. So that's kind of a sobering analysis. It's an excellent paper, by the way. It just came out in the end of September. But it's very interesting because it's very well mathematically positioned. So I'm just summarizing it. But and the cost of the energy is not negligible. Okay, it's very significant. It's not accidental, by the way. At the United States, they resurfaced the discussion about nuclear power. Right? Google has options to use nuclear power in its data centers. Why? Because it's clear that it's not enough. On the one hand, we want to preserve the planet, CO2 emission, yada yada yada. On the other hand, we are spending I don't know what to create videos of kitty cats, right? So obviously something has to give here, and I think reality will come in when people's appetite to invest. Right now, the investment in the United States, it's all channeled to AI. Okay, all these billions of dollars being raised by OpenAI. By the way, it's removed for other purposes, right? So let's say more modest businesses, okay? At some point, the market will stop, okay? And people use AGI to entice people to invest. It won't happen. And there are actually, Jan LeCun, who is the chief scientist of AI for Facebook, says, and I agree, that we're not going to get the AGI with LLMs. That's clear. But you use AGI to entice people to invest in your company, because if you lose money like crazy, billions of dollars, you need to keep raising money to sustain it. So we'll see where that ends. It's not going to be a happy ending. But what will be left after that is a technology which is valuable, but we will pay. It's not going to be.
And sorry, just because I think it's super interesting. I think what's very exciting in the next few months is that there's actually implementation of all this with real businesses, right? So you're looking at the main competitors and the drivers, both at the US level and European level. Focusing more on Europe, I think it's more interesting for us. Going into industries, going into governments, going into, again, shipping companies, and actually doing deals. And I think this will determine the pricing as well, and will also determine the use as well. Because at the end of the day, if you make a framework and you describe the KPIs and the cost savings and everything that you're trying to accomplish in terms of productivity and better performance, then 6 months later or 1 year later or a year and a half later, you have to see how you're performing against these KPIs. And this ultimately does your cost-benefit analysis, which sees where you stand, what you should be charging, if it makes sense, and how we move on to the actual implementation phase. I think that's super exciting, by the way, because it's all ahead of us.
Very interesting, thank you. There's two more topics I'd like to touch for the audience. One is, obviously there's laws and regulatory bodies that are going to have a say in all of this, I assume, very soon, whether that's on the obvious things like property rights, people's sort of intellectual theft and all of these things, which are sort of the obvious, but I'm sure it's going to go furthermore. And the last part I'd like sort of to discuss a bit is what practical advice can we give to today's CEOs? I think an easy one is you can get now all of these products at probably a tenth of a price, so use them, right? Because you're never going to find them all that cheap. So I'll start with the regulatory. Maybe Nico, with you, how do you see all of this sort of evolving, or how sort of traditionally, especially the European authorities, which are quite interventionist, will deal with all of this chaos?
Yeah, regulations is the heart of this, especially when it comes to Europe. In the United States, things are a little bit more lax. But in the EU, that we like to regulate a lot. AI will have to comply with many things. That's a consideration when it comes to adoption within the companies and the cost that they have to pay in order to bring AI into the transformation in the organization. So it's a very important issue to consider in all this transformation, AI transformation that we're undergoing.
Alex, do you think the regulatory impact is going to be harsher or more impactful on the business side or on the individual sort of side?
For the intellectual property, I think there's a serious issue with creators right now.
Creative, yeah.
If you're a creator now, imagine what happened to you. I mean, let's say musicians. I play music, by the way, so I'm very close to the profession. So imagine you have Spotify, which pays nothing. Okay, Spotify, even though they could keep track of every song I play and take my money and give it to whoever wrote that song. They don't do that. No, they do statistics. As if they could not track, for every song played. So if let's say I have 1,000 people who love me and they just listen to Alex all day long, okay? But there are 1,000 only, right? For Spotify, that's nothing. I'm a nobody. I'll get nothing, no payment, right? So this is an example where technology can be applied in a very sort of lopsided way. So for AI now, being trained with material is one thing, but let's say you're addressing that. But then, in Spotify specifically, they identify millions of tracks which were produced by AI. Okay, so how can you compete then as an individual, right, with your own intellectual output to a machine producing, obviously it's not going to be masterpieces, but you see what you're listening to on your radio today or on the elevator coming up and down, etc., etc. So it's a big question, existential question there, okay?
So we're moving from content is king to content is dead pretty soon.
Well, the content production is going to be dead if you don't do anything about it, because people need to pay tuition to study music, they need to pay their rent, they need to pay for food to produce music. So I think live is protected in the sense that live music is very hard to replicate today, at least, when we get there, right? And in my mind also, this is the most pure, if you wish, as an experience, right? Like theater, for example, right? So theater as well, you cannot replicate. But again, it's not a beautiful picture, okay? By the way, how many of you in the audience are using today AI tools in your day-to-day job, just out of curiosity? Is there pretty much? Yeah. Okay, it makes sense. Me too. I mean, at Big Pie, we have a prompt. You send me a deck via email. I'll forward it to an agent, and it will populate a Notion database with all the information about you and the company that can extract from the email. So that saves time from an associate, let's say, to go in and log in. That's a perfect example. Okay? So that's good. I think the answer in terms of how do we use this, I think you have to look at your processes and try to use existing tools to build your product. And if you can export AI also as a feature of your product, this if you're writing an email client, for example, right? You want to put that in. That's the best you can do today, and just keep tagging along. There's nothing else.
Just going back to I like the creativity discussion. It's a different spin. Just to say, as a preface, Alex plays live music on Thursday, so you should go there.
10% discount for everybody,
yes,
with this stuff.
I guess 15. Sorry. But I think like, because I speak to a lot of creators on the writing side as well, music, etc. And I think, again, I'm finding it super exciting because there's so much replication so far, which is bad replication. So, I don't know, I have a teenage daughter who's into all these vampire things. And you know, you write one book about vampires and werewolves, and then there are a million books written by actual people about vampires and werewolves. And I think that's redundant. Like AI can make any story like that. But there will always be space for original thought, and your original thought, and whether it's writing or music or whatever it is, comes from personal experiences, and that will never be replaced. So I think everything else can just go to AI. Like if you're replicating and kind of creating synthetic music out of different things, fine. And there will always be originality because that's how human nature works. So I think again, it's super exciting what's happening.
Nice. Yeah, I agree. It's very exciting. I'd like to go to maybe some advice that we can leave our audience with as CEOs, how they can sort of navigate this sort of rapid change. I think from my side, the only thing that I would say at this early stage is don't default to hiring BCG or consultants to advise you on AI. They're still quite low on the learning curve. If you want to be actually experimental, hire a VC to advise you. They're probably much more sort of in tune with what's going on in the market. But yeah, what about the three of you? What advice could you give?
Yeah, I would say, again, super excited about the time, because I think for CEOs, you can, especially if you're at the beginning, you can iterate so much with almost zero cost now. So you're at the stage where, you know, we don't exactly have to figure out the pricing as we said before, which gives you the opportunity without VC money, without a lot of time, to just iterate and iterate and iterate, and you have no excuse not to do it. So you know, when you do go in front of an investor, or when you do send your deck, you should have gone through like cycles which 2 years ago would have taken 2 years and a few million for another CEO to execute, right? So I think that's an amazing opportunity, and it's also our challenge as VCs to figure out, you know, why you're there, where you can go with the money, what you're covering that's not already out there. But I think it's an amazing opportunity to go faster with less money and with real feedback from the product and kind of the people you're serving. And the same goes at every path, by the way. Like if you're in a scale-up stage, again, you can do so many more things. I think it's easier at the beginning because nothing is written, so you're writing on blank pages, right? But like at every stage, you can do a lot more in less time with less money. So this like opens up all sorts of possibilities. So my advice is just go ahead and do it. And if you need external help, be it money, time, resources, whatever, go ask for it. But try it out first. And now you can do it. You can do it so easily, and it's fun.
Yeah, I'll be a little more practical. I completely agree also, but don't use any sort of expensive consultants, that's for sure. But what I would do is I would look at my tech team and my product team. I'll go to the CTO and identify one person for the team where I would create like a skunk works kind of project where I would enable somebody to take ownership of this AI, let's say, transformation. Allow the person to learn. So you got to get them off the main production sort of work. Right? Have a person be continuously educated so they can go out and learn and use all these tools. And because they have the expertise of the product, they'll be able to see how to start building components of what they learn into the process. So I think there's nobody better positioned to understand what you can do on the product than the people who are already building it. But you need to empower them to catch up, okay, because everything is moving very fast. Okay, so you need to give them time and money potentially to take a course, whatever, right? To ramp up and be able to see what's the latest and how to connect it. So that's what I would recommend.
Yeah, I agree with both of you and Alberto and Alex. One thing I think is important is also to understand what's good for your organization. So you got to do a review, an internal review, and understand how your organization performs and how open it is to change and see how you can bring that change inside, but slower or faster pace. You have to bring it. I mean, the companies cannot stay behind, and they need to be transformed through AI, but at the same time, focus on your people and your organization and the strategy that you have for your company. It's very important all these things to align in order to be successful. Otherwise, the training tools, some people use them, some people don't. So you have a confusion and you don't know how effective that would be for an organization. So you got to be careful.
Thank you all. I see we have a couple of minutes. Can we take a question from the audience or no?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, go. Go for it.
Yeah.
For all three, like, in other countries, like in the UK, we recently observed like a boom of AI companies in the application space, not necessarily in the infrastructure space, that is actually happening by people that don't have very large CVs, they don't come from Google, they don't come from Nvidia, and they build very successful companies like Fixer, Granola, etc. And mostly, I don't know, from the availability of funding and the existence of a market that would give them recurring revenue. I just wondered, what are your thoughts about the Greek market? What are the thoughts about the Greek ecosystem? Can we see something similar happening here?
Do you want to state your name?
I'm Georgios, to be honest. I'm like from Agile Actors.
Okay, great. Just have some fun. Sorry, just to understand the question. Is the question, should the local ecosystem, is the expectation for the local ecosystem to have more people that come trained from like larger companies or kind of like self-whatever, or what?
I mean, the essence of my question is like, do you foresee something similar happening to the Greek ecosystem or not? Like, do you think that we can experience such a success here in Greece?
So we don't have success yet, elsewhere. I mean, if you're defining success as raising funds, for sure, there's a lot of money available. I think very similarly in Greece, you have funds and you have non-experienced funds. Like all of us have been doing this for the best part of the decade. Nico's a bit more as well, because the most experienced for sure on the investment side. Like so there's no, it's true. So you have capital, you have people by default, and you have companies that have grown to people. By the way, companies that have been founded before in the last 15 years, let's say, are expected by us, at least that's a working assumption, that they will be producing new founders, whether it's companies that have been funded, companies that have been doing development services like other actors, like programs, whatever it is, that they will bring out new founders. So in my opinion, all the elements are here, and that's the expectation, and this is also why we keep raising funds and we don't find something else to do in our lives, right? Because we think that the core is here. There are many things that can be very specific and where you can have added value as the Greek reality. There is experience now, mainly on kind of who's the, let's say, material for founders, but also with the money that are there to support it. So,
if I were to add, from the pie, our experience is that if you look at our portfolio too, we tend to invest in Greeks, diaspora Greeks, meaning Greeks who studied abroad, worked abroad, and then they created the company abroad. And there's a good reason for that, is that when you invest in an enterprise software, right, to be able to create a solution that's meaningful for a modern enterprise, you must have seen an enterprise, right? So it's very hard to do that in Greece. It's a very small market with very small companies, right? We're a very teeny tiny country with small companies, if you think about it. So if you look at the types of companies we need to be investing to return our fund, our second fund, we're investing right now, 68 million euros, right? So to be meaningful for our investors, I have to bring in at least 120 in 5 years. And I'll invest in 18 companies, every 3 will be successful. Do the math. They have to be super successful. So I need to invest in companies that can exit at $1 billion. Potentially. I'm not saying they will, but I have to be able to reach that number. So we're not investing in good companies. That's a misconception by naming. VCs, unfortunately, have to look for exceptional performance. Not just good performance, which would be excellent to put our own, let's say, personal money, have some profit every year to share. No, that's not good enough for VCs, right? So in that respect, yes, there is tons of stuff happening by Greeks, not necessarily in Greece in terms of founding a company, but when you invest in them, they all build things here, and you are, I guess, a beneficiary of that as a company who routinely gets contracts from these people, right? And I think we are meeting them from our statistics. In other words, there are US companies that have hundreds of people in Athens. Are they Greek companies or US companies? Like Orson, for example, like 20 people, 35 people in LA, 300 people in Athens. Is it a US company or a Greek company? You tell me. And in the statistics, it will count as a US company, right? I think it's a mistake.
Also taxes,
Yeah, we'll pay taxes.
I cannot say because it's a private company, so it does not publish.
Okay, so
but taxes is secondary, okay? But anyway, I don't know if we answered the question. I think that the answer is very small. So if you look at a pure Greek company with Greek founders started in Greece, okay, it's very hard. Okay, and maybe we have one example from Big Pie, a company called Akisonus, which was started by, was an angel investor, invested as a fund as well. They did audio signal processing software. Two guys out of University of Patras, PhDs, right? Greek company, started in Greece, grew, it was sold to Meta. But the executive chairman was the Greek American, Michael Janes, CEO of Aware Communications in Boston, very seasoned entrepreneur. He put his own money initially in the company as a late sort of co-founder. He helped them build the company. So is that a pure Greek company? I think the answer is, it's not, right? Because you have that DNA, right, brought in by Marco, the business information and knowledge that the guys had no way of having. I mean, they were just youngsters coming out of PhDs. So we need that in Greece. So it will either come by somebody like Janes who invests and put his hands into the company, or we take the Greek subside Greece to be educated, get the experience, and then get the company, and then the rest here can do the product development.
Can I add my 2 cents from maybe the entrepreneur sort of side? I've been living for the past 14 years in Switzerland. I've done sort of 3 startups. I've never managed to raise money from Greece, but I never even managed to raise money from Switzerland. Now, 15 years later, I'm finding it much more attractive as an environment to come back to Greece and build, rather than stay sort of in Switzerland.
Maybe a question was because you did not answer anything. So we have some in our application. So maybe you could tell us, how do you value something that's, okay, we see constantly changing, okay, every month or every 3 months. So how do you see that?
It's not easy.
Of course.
It's not easy to do that. I think the new coin is data, to be honest with you. When it comes to this type of platforms, you have to say, in order to see how valuable they are is how they treat data, and how, and in order to see the value of that, you have to have data. That's the new revenue if you're asking when it comes to AI. And see how effective it transforms organization at the end of the day. If you're using them, you're gaining or you're even. I mean, to me, it has not been decided yet, to be honest with you. We need some more time to understand how valuable all this is at the end of the day for corporates.
Okay.
Mirto, Alex, and Nico, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So much.